Hello guys, in this video I'm gonna share with you some tips and tricks for Korg Minilogue XD. I've been using this synthesizer for a couple of months. I've made two banks of presets for it. One is 50 Arp presets and the other one is 50 pad presets. If you're interested in new presets for your XD, you may check the link in the description and watch and listen to the audio demos. So my video is devoted to Arpeggio, how to make it lively, dynamic and more interesting. Though Korg's Arpeggio is great by itself, for me it was always a good point of all Korg synthesizers of all time. They had great arpeggios. And today I'm gonna show you how to make it even more interesting if you use some tips and tricks. Let's start with quite simple things. First of all, let's turn it on. For those of you who don't know this feature, we can switch it down. You see it's blinking. And now we can hold our arpeggio. Again, pushing it down, turn this latch off. Now let's make our arpeggio a bit quicker. We're gonna set it to 32 notes. Let's play it. These fast arpeggios may be found in some classical electronica by Vangelis, for example, in his legendary track Spiral. Now let's hold it. I'm not gonna use this function, but I'm gonna hold the keys with my sustain pedal. Let's move to the page sequencer parameter, and on the third page of this menu there is a swing. Now let's hold the arpeggio. On the very extreme settings of swing and with the very fast arpeggio, 32 notes, 64, we have some kind of ratchets. And it sounds a bit freaky. If arpeggio rate is not that quick, it sounds a bit more natural, average. But again, with this, this thing is quite simple, but I like the result it gives and I'm sharing it with you. Now let's make some more complicated things and not that obvious like swing and fast arpeggio. I have a regular arpeggio. The thing is that we can't remove the steps from our arpeggio. We can remove steps only in sequencer in XD. If you're using a sequencer, you can turn on 1, 2, 3 steps, then 4 is off, 5, 6 on, 6 off, and so on. But you can't do this with arpeggio. I also have chord radius, and you can remove steps in arpeggio as well, but can't do it here. But I found a trick that can somehow emulate this process. First of all, let's do some settings. In arpeggio, turn gate time for some minimum amount. You hear just the clicks because the notes are so short. And let's add some release to make it longer. And now again we have quite a regular arpeggio. And then to emulate the process of removing the steps from arpeggio, let's do some motion modulation. We're gonna modulate the attack knob on the amp envelope. I'm gonna show you. Let's hold some keys, push rec. Now we can play any sequences, any arpeggios. And we have this new pattern with on and off some kind of steps. It's quite difficult to make fine tunings of this attack up and down to catch certain steps that you want. And here we need some other trick. First of all, let's turn off in motion modulation smooth mode. So the behavior of this knob could be some kind of on and off. Then let's switch the step to half notes or full bar. Why do we need this? When resolution is 1/16, the playback of the sequence and the motion modulation is quite quick, and recording this modulation at such high speed is quite difficult. So we increase the resolution, the sequence is gonna play in a low speed, and we can make these tweakings in a much more detailed way. So in half notes you see how the speed is low, and now I can easily modulate this attack knob without hurrying up. Let's try it again. I'm gonna hold some notes. Now I have steps that are on and off with this attack knob. And let's change again the sequence speed to regular resolution, something like 116. Play our motion. And you see I have this interesting pattern, not all steps on, but some off and on. That was possible on Korg Radius, and it's possible on some VST synthesizers like Omnisphere, Spire, and others. I tweaked some parameters to make this preset sound like this, as listening to the default saw is a bit boring. Let's go further. For most of you, it's obvious how this sequence motion modulation works. You just play rec, as we did it previously, and move some parameters, and it's recorded here. But it can be not that obvious that we can modulate not only the knobs, but the switches as well. For example, let's modulate the octave switch. Again, I could do it more precisely if I change the resolution before the recording of this modulation. Let's try it. We can also record one of these. We can also record changing the wave shape. And now let's play this modulation with regular speed. You see how with these simple things the arpeggio became more interesting, removing steps, modulating the switches, and I'm not gonna say to you that you can modulate any other parameters that you like. Another thing that is important for me if I'm making these dynamic arpeggios is adding accents to the pattern. How to do it? Let's go to the menu, program, and we should set the velocity for the first envelope and for the second one. So one of the envelopes is going to give an accent from the point of view of volume, and another one going to give the accent from the point of view of darkness or brightness with the filter. Now let's check it. So I press the keys quite soft, and one of the notes I'm going to play a bit harder. Do you hear the difference? Now let's add some more amount of envelope to the filter. Let's play again. Soft notes. Another one soft. Then hard one. Another soft. And then hard one. For this type of dynamic patterns, you should find a good position of cutoff envelope and envelope generator, as I did with you while playing these notes. Speaking about the modes of arpeggio, there are many of them, starting with manual 2 octaves, rise, fall, up and down, poly, and random, with up to 3 octaves. The first thing I should say that my favorite one is manual, because it reminds me kind of sequencer. It's not like I hold 3 notes and then the arpeggio plays it like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, according to the mode. But I can push the notes in any order, and then arpeggio gonna repeat this order and making an arpeggio sound like not an arpeggio but a sequence, because sequence is notes in a certain order. So I like making arpeggios with manual mode, with some steps that removed, with the accents. with 2 octaves. You see how far this from the point of view of complexity if you just turned the arpeggio mode on and then hold the keys. It was just pam 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 pam. And here it's a bit more musical and dynamic. Another thing with this mode knob is that we can modulate it too. For example, let's remove some sequences to have some free space. By the way, before we modulate this knob, I should say that all switches can be modulated. These, and this, and all of them, with one exception, is this drive switch. You can't modulate it. At least on the firmware I have at the moment of shooting this video. Okay, now let's try to tweak this mode knob. You see on this high rate it's quite difficult to tweak this knob to record the modulation. Again, let's do our old trick and set the resolution a bit slower, and let's do it again. Something like this, and then again let's switch it to normal resolution. You see, if you're lucky enough to catch some chords while tweaking this knob, your arpeggio gonna turn into 2 things. One is chord sequencer and another one is just a regular sequencer. So just holding a regular chord, I've got chords and melody. You can do this thing only with a sequencer that is built into XD. But you know, if you record the sequence, you can't play with this. You can just play it back or transpose it. But here you have full freedom of playing any chords, with any accents, with nothing pre-recorded. Now let's remove all the modulations. So I have a quite regular arpeggio. Let's close the filter down and make an arpeggio quite fast. I'll add some gate. Now it sounds like this. The next trick is called something like a double arpeggio. I have one arpeggio that is regular with these 30-second notes. And let's add a new layer of arpeggio. What I mean? Again, let's close the filter a bit more. And use our LFO with BPM mode to regulate the frequency of our filter. You see, nothing happens on slow rates, only on high ones. That's because the LFO triggers each time it receives a note. And as far as we have many notes and quite often, it retriggers all the time. So let's turn this retrigger off It's somewhere here. Key sync off. And now we can set quite slow LFOs. Let's change it to saw shape. So now we have a perception of this slow LFO with these fourth notes. But you remember we have quite fast arpeggio. Now let's combine this layer of 32nd notes with this layer of 3/16 notes. I got some polyrhythm because of the difference between the rate of LFO and an arpeggio. Let's try different shapes. And so on and so forth. You can play with this endlessly. It's quite interesting, and you see how I excited with this process and forgot about my video. There's another thing I like making with arpeggio is adding a click to its sound. Let me show you. I've made some changes. The preset sounds a bit more easily to perceive. And what I meant by adding a click, you know that we can turn sync on the oscillator too. Now it's making things like this. And you also know that we can send envelope generator to this pitch to make it dynamic. So if the decay is quite short and the influence is quite high, and now we can mix it to the general oscillator. You see how the click is added? It's not like we mixed a noise, but something different. Without it, maybe difference quite subtle, but anyway we hear it. Next thing I'm gonna show you is the following. I'm gonna record the motion modulation for filter frequency. So you see it's quite a simple thing. But then, during the performance or recording your synth into your DAW, we can add even more life to this, for example, filter knob. And now let's play our arpeggio. You see the high values here. Now I turn it down. You see, each time I touch the knob or tweak it a bit, the sequence is bypassed and the synthesizer catches and uses the values from our hands. And you see, you can combine this modulation and your manual tweakings and get some unexpected results and happy accidents. You can find some interesting rhythmical things. This may demand a bit more time because you may heard that I have some clicks and drops. Like this, and these things may be not what you like. So you should spend some more time to record the modulation with different positions and see in which range of this knob you can work to avoid these clicks and unwanted sounds. And with many other knobs like shape or something else, you're not gonna hear these clicks, I guess. And the last thing I'm gonna show you today is the following. The combination between the mod wheel on your keyboard and this joystick. I removed motion modulation to the filter, now it sounds like this. Now I'm gonna add to Y up this LFO knob, amount of the modulation, to 100%. So it sounds like this when I raise it up. And if you're using the latest firmware, you can do this Y up movement with your regular mod wheel on your keyboard. And the trick is that we can combine this mod wheel with Y down movement. The thing you can do with this joystick is whether up or down, and not up and down at the same time. Y down is set to filter cutoff down. Now let's combine this modulation with LFO and filter down. I found this thing quite interesting because with these two controllers you can modulate a single knob with different modulations or movements. Up adds modulation to the filter, with LFO down closes it. But you may try any different combination of these two parameters. For example, up adds LFO influence and down changes the LFO rate. By the way, let's try it. So I've set this Y down to raise the speed of the LFO, and now let's combine them. And you see, you may find more and more combination to have an access to the parameters in a quite quick way, not just turning it here and ruin the settings that are saved. But I've set this position, saved it, and then I can move these parameters, release them, and have my original sound. Because when you tweak the exact knobs, you may forget what was the original position. I like the opportunities XD gives to make the presets lively, dynamic, evolving, morphing, and I use these opportunities a lot. I don't always like static and simple presets or timbres. I usually like something running around and changing and so on. And again, if you like my view and my concept of how interesting presets may sound, you may check my soundset that I made for XD, Arps and pads. If you like the video, subscribe to my channel not to miss new tutorials. You may also find some interesting things in my previous videos. And I guess that's all for today, and see you in next videos. Goodbye, guys.